Hey, good morning. I'm not going to introduce anything new today, but I'm going to have a special tool that we're going to use later on today. So I'm glad you're watching the video today. I'm still having a very small number of people watching the videos, and yesterday's paper that they turned in, they're not getting them right. So I don't know. Again, I'm probably preaching to the wrong crowd because they're not watching the video. So I'm glad you are. Do me a favor real quick and just do problem number one, and then we'll kind of move through 3 or 4 problems today. This is all your homework here. We're going to do 2 things at once. We're going to talk about solving systems of equations by graphing and doing your homework at the same time. So again, I'm hoping that you say this is my x and that's my y, and you just plug them in. Looks like it's going to work on the first one. A lot of kids in my class don't know how to add integers, and so it's slowing them down because they just relied on their calculator for so long. It's a 2 right there. I'm sure you're going to get it. No, it's not. Sorry, I want to start this one over. You're probably already done. I didn't plug it in correctly. So I'll be more careful here. We got 3 times 4 plus 1 equals 11. That's 12 plus 1. So that's not a true statement, so this is not a solution. Okay, now do me a favor if you would, and let's go down to do number 9. Now on this section here, they already graphed the equations for us, and so we want to just check that solution out there real quick. So we got -2, 2. So now we just need to check it. So it works in the first one. And the reason I'm having you do this is I want you to get really fast at this whole checking thing. It's a very good tool to kind of check, especially when you get to some harder graphs here. And it looks like it works, so that's our solution there. Okay? All right, now let's go to a different page and let's talk about some of these guys here. All right, they're still graphing there. Let's go down here and do some of these. Oh, let's find a good one here. Let's look at number 15. So to graph that little guy right there on number 15, we have lots of ways to graph. We can put it in the y equals mx plus b form. I see they're both in standard form, so we could use the intercepts. Like on the first one there, I would not use intercepts on this one because the y-intercept is going to be a +1, because if I take this away, I'd have to divide both sides by a -1, so the y-intercept would be a 1, but that guy there is going to be a decimal, 1/3, and so that's a little bit harder to do. So what I would do is, and you can work your way up on these because there's not much room, so as we get older, let's get this into the y equals mx plus b form. And so what I would do is show you now that we can start working up by adding 3 x's to both sides. And so now I have, and I want to leave a little bit of room underneath it, minus y equals 3x minus 1. And now I want to divide by a -1. And now my final equation on this one would be a y equals -3x plus 1. Now this is a lot easier to graph. Let's go ahead and graph that one. I have a y-intercept of 1, and my slope is a -3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And again, I'm hoping you're using a ruler. I showed somebody that your name wasn't on the paper. Probably, again, not watching the video student, but I showed a paper where a kid turned the paper in, and with the graph, that was just horrific. Their lines were not with a ruler, and they were curved, and it was just really terrible. So you need a straight edge at this point, if you haven't already figured out from yesterday's paper. Now I'm looking at the second equation, and that's in standard form, and so I think I'm going to use the y-intercepts. So to find the x-intercept, I'm going to put a 0 in for the y, 0 in for the y, and 2 goes into -8. But I don't see a -8 on my graph paper, so that's not going to work. But it would have been a good strategy because, both of them are divisible by 4 and 2. So if I had different graph paper, but that's not going to work. So we tried. Let's get it into the y equals mx plus b form. So I got 1/2 x minus 4. Looks like it's a -1/2 x minus 4. All right, so -4. I have a negative slope, so it's up 1 over 1, 2. I could go down 1 over 1, 2, and you see how that landed on that same dot? I'm pretty sure that's going to be my solution. All right, so I love it when I do the slope, and sometimes I'll do the slope like that multiple times until I land on the other line. And then I'm pretty good at where it's at. All right, so I'm looking at 2, -5 is my solution. A lot of times kids will not put parentheses around their brackets like that. It is a coordinate. So when we say the solution is 2, -5, you need to put the brackets around it. Okay. Now I need to go turn my lights on here because I just turned off, but I want to show you one tool that you can use if you use it as a tool. Just a second, I'll be right back. All right, so on your internet, if you get to your computer and you go to the internet, and I want to close this one up so you can see where it didn't do it. If you just type in Desmos, which I'm sure you probably have used this before, and you go to Desmos Calculator, under Graphing Calculator, you will see a tool. Well, sometimes it pops up. Sometimes you have to say, I want to use the free online calculator. All right. So what we're going to do is the nice thing about Desmos is it's a hazard because you can just put in any equation and it'll graph it for you. And the second hazard that I really want you to be careful of is some kids will say, oh, wow, this is the nicest tool. And so on all their math problems, because you're not in class and you're not turning your papers in, you're just turning in answers, that it's really kind of a hazard because I won't know if you're showing your work or not on the problems. So it's kind of a tool to use, but we still got to be able to know how to do it mathematically. And so if you just keep using Desmos as a tool to solve these problems, then when it comes to test time and you have to turn your test in, a lot of times kids won't show any work and they have the answer, but I know they cheated because they went to Desmos and got the answer. So number one, be careful that you know how to do the work. Once we know how to do the work, then we can use tools like graphing calculators, okay? So here's what we want to do. We're doing number 15, so let me get my paper out. Let's go into Desmos and put these two equations into the calculator, okay? And here we go. So you can either use the keyboard or you can use the Desmos keyboard. Let me find it here because now, oh, I know. It should be down here at the bottom. No, I'll find it here. Oh, this is my recording. And I think my recording's over my Desmos tool. So I'm going to just use my keyboard here because I can't get my tools. They're down here that says pull up my keyboard. Interesting. Let's see if I can move this around. Nope, that ain't going to work either. So I'm just going to use my keyboard to type it in. We'll deal with that. So if you just start typing in negative 3x, you don't even have to put it in standard, y equals mx plus b form. You can have it in any form. And we got negative 1. There's my graph. As soon as I have two variables there, an x and a y, it shows up my graph here. It also shows my x and y intercept, so that's kind of a nice, because look at that, that's a decimal right there, my x-intercept. All right, so let's go down here and put in the second equation. Let's say 2x minus y. Well, no, it was 2x plus 4y equals negative 16. All right, make sure I got my equations right. We got 3x minus y minus 1. That's true. 2x plus 4y minus 16. And so again, it shows the intercepts. There's my negative 0, negative 4 is my y-intercept, because a lot of times in graphing, these are important, the intercepts. There's my intercept there. We came up with that one when we were kind of doing the, finding the intercepts, because it was in standard form, but we didn't have negative 8 on my graph paper. So here's our solution. Again, if you hover over it, you get negative 2, or 2, negative 5, just like they said. Okay, so we can use this as a tool to check our work. We can use it as a tool to speed some things up, but don't use it inappropriately. Okay, it's a tool that for the next 3 weeks, when we're solving by graphing, by elimination, substitution, it's very easy for kids to say, wow, you know what, I want to get my homework done, so I'm going to come in here, I'm going to use Desmos, I'm going to graph it, and I'll have my answer, and homework will be over in no time at all. Don't get into that trap, because again, when it comes test time, you have to show your work. And so you just can't have an answer. It'll just be wrong, okay? So I'm glad you're watching the video today, because on number 17 and 18, there's a star by those on your paper, and then 20 and 21, you're allowed to use a graphing calculator on those, okay? You still have to do this check part down here, okay? But let's go ahead and try putting on, I don't know, let's do number 20. Let's do number 20, because it's got some weird, let's go over here, that's counting by threes. Let's do 21, and then I'll let you go for the day. Let's put in 21 to Desmos. Okay, so the way you get rid of them is you just hit the X here, and let's go put them in. Gotta find my equal sign. Right here. There's my first graph. All right, now we'll talk about how to get this graph onto your paper using this graph as well. So it looks like my answer is way up here at 2, 7. Does that sound right? 2, 7? Yep, I think so. So I'm not sure why it's not showing the dot. Oh, if you click on it, that's the deal. All right, so now if I want to transfer this graph to my graph paper, I can pretty well see that it's a 2 here, but let's find the intercepts. Right there they are, 0, 2, and you can click on it if you need to. So on 0, 2, which you'd have to estimate on your graphing paper because they're counting by threes. And then look at this. This one here's a decimal here, negative 0.80. So kind of be careful when you're graphing down there, okay? Sometimes I'll look for little coordinates, which this one here, how our graph paper only goes down to negative 1. So I'll look for a coordinate that's pretty close and then graph that. Like right here is a good one. Even though it's a decimal, I can graph that one at 1, 4.5. So again, do your very best to get it on the paper. So that's why these are on here, and I'm glad you're watching the video, because I'll tell you what, the kids that don't have the graphing calculator on graphing that one, it's going to be a real challenge. Okay, so there's a go. Thanks for watching my videos, because this will pay off, and that's what those little stars mean. So you'll transfer this graph to the paper, And you will still have to do your checking down here. But what did we say the answer was on that one over there? I think we said the answer was 2.7. So write 2.7 in there, and then you can just check your work down below. So again, let's practice getting that baby onto graphing paper. You will use the graphing calculator when you get to Algebra 2, because like they're doing systems of equations with 3 equations and 3 variables. And so sometimes that's a little tough. So I want to do my 2.7. So we're going to 3, 6, 9. So that'd be 6, 7. It's going to be like somewhere right in here. This is going to be my vertex. So let's go back to my graph paper and do our very best to get this baby onto our graphing paper. So there's -2. So that's almost -1, 0. So on my paper, let's say right about there. So again, here's the payoff for you guys that are watching the video today. So there's my first line. My second line, we'll look for a couple points here. Just a little bit past 3 is my x-intercept. So I'm going to use a different color here. I know it has to go through this coordinate right here, but I'm going to try to find one more dot here. That might be good. My graph paper goes up to 21, so let's see if we can find my y-intercept here. So my y-intercept is 0, 19, so let's see if we can find 19 on my graph paper. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, so it's going to be like right about in there. And now if we connect our dots, there we go. Now again, if you graph that one, which you could, and we would, it would be very hard. You'd be doing a whole lot of guessing and checking to find out. I mean, we could do some estimating because all the answers today are whole numbers. By the way, that's a very important thing. All your coordinates up here are whole numbers. But we will get decimal answers where the vertex or where the solution is, where the 2 lines cross. All right, so still check that one down here. So make sure 2.7 works, but you don't have to show your work on these 2 because we're going to use the graphing calculator, and you don't have to show your work on these 2 unless you want to practice getting these 2. All right, the rest of them, you need to show your work. Now again, I won't know because you're just putting the answers in. So could you use Desmos for the whole thing? Yes, and probably wouldn't hurt to do it to check your answers. Okay, but you're checking your answers each time, so I mean you're mathematically proving it. So kind of be careful. Again, it could be very, very dangerous. I've had many kids that just are not confident in their math skills. They want it to be over with, like it's going to go away. And so they will just use the graphing calculator to get all their answers, and then the quiz or the test comes along and they flunk the test. Homework's only worth 10% of your grade. Tests and quizzes are half your grade. So please don't make the mistake of just relying on that graphing calculator. All right? I get it. It's a free tool. It's a tool there that everybody has access to. You use it as a tool to help you in learning. Okay? It's your job to learn how to do this. All right. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. We'll see you on the Monday side where we do it by substitution. We'll solve graphing by substitution because that last graph that we did, that would be a real challenge to get an answer by graphing. So once again, thank you for watching my videos because I think the videos are going to help you versus if you were just kind of winging it. All right. Have a good Thanksgiving and we'll see you on Monday.